My roommate did not pay the power bill. I came home from work on a Friday night ready to start my normal NBA season ritual. Drink 12 beers, watch the game, and crawl in bed a fat, happy drunk. All that came to a grinding halt when I came home to find our power had gone out. All of our neighbors still had power, so my roommate obviously hadn't paid our power bill. I called my roommate, who had left that morning to go on vacation with his family, and told him he needed to get this fixed ASAP. I was planned on spending my weekend in a dark apartment with no NBA. Might as well go camping at that point, and I hate camping. An hour after I called him, my roommate called me back saying the bill had been paid and we would get power back in probably a few hours. At that point, I decided I would go to a friend's place, watch the game, and by the time I got back home around midnight, the power would be back on. Fast forward, and am leaving my friend's house. My phone had died an hour or so ago, so my friend called a taxi for me. I got dropped off, and the taxi drove away. I looked up at the apartment building and saw all of the apartments are lit up with electric light. Some burned a bright yellow, some a moody blue from the TVs. My apartment was the lone black window. There was still a chance I had power. I just didn't leave any lights on when I left for work that morning. I opened the apartment door and looked into the pitch blackness of the apartment before me. The closest light switch was about 10 feet from the front door, so I would need to feel along the walls for it in the blackness. The door thudded shut behind me as I felt my way along the walls, leaving me in near total darkness. It was much darker than I expected in the apartment. It didn't help we usually keep the blinds closed to thwart nosy neighbors. I must have missed the light switch because the first thing I felt in my hands was a door frame. It was my bedroom door I wandered in, still hugging the wall, and my bedroom door whined a loud creak as I leaned up against it. I hated that door. The slightest touch would cause the door to seemingly scream. I usually had to keep it latched, otherwise it would creak every time. The air conditioner turned on or off, and it scared the shit out of me every time. Eventually, I found the light switch. Flick, nothing. Fuck, no power. I kept the switch turned on, so if the power returned soon I would know immediately. I remembered thinking, camping. This is pretty much camping. I hate camping. I would crawl in bed, and hopefully we would have power in the morning. I wanted to brush my teeth first, so I felt along the walls and found my way into my ensuite bathroom. The bathroom seemed even darker and more oppressive than the rest of the apartment. Around the corner from any windows, and having no windows itself, the bathroom was essentially a black hole. No light could escape it. My hands grasped around my cluttered bathroom counter, finding toothpaste and, after some time, my toothbrush. I stood in complete darkness, brushing my teeth, wishing for light, and listening to the sounds that accompanied living in a crowded apartment complex. I heard footfalls in the apartment above me. I could hear the neighbor couple next door arguing. Then I heard the unmistakable creaking of my bedroom door. The first thought I had was that the power was back on. The air conditioner must have turned on, and the air pressure moved the door and made it whine. Then I realized the light in my bedroom hadn't turned on. Someone in the apartment. I suddenly felt exposed in the blackness of the bathroom, like I was being watched. I thought about the stories I heard of pirates wearing eye patches to adjust their eyes, to seeing in the dark to have the advantage in night combat. I hadn't heard the front door open, So if something was in here, it had been in here longer than I had and probably would have adjusted to the lack of light by now. I swallowed my toothpaste, too afraid to make noise, and I sat crouched in the pitch black of the bathroom, ears straining to pick up any sound coming from my bedroom. I remembered I had a power bank sitting in my nightstand. If I could find that, I could charge my phone, and then I would have a flashlight. After 5 or so minutes of working up my courage, I slowly crept out of the bathroom. It seemed to have gotten even darker in the apartment in the last 10 minutes, and I walked slowly and silently with my hands outstretched, probing the darkness. My hands were at chest height, groping in the direction of my bed. I found my lamp and worked down to the nightstand on which it sat. I opened the top drawer and started feeling for the brick-like power bank. Every sound I made, every accidental click of my fingernails, hitting the wood of the nightstand, felt like I was making myself known to a predator. I felt like I was being hunted. I felt a sitting duck. I found the power bank and the necessary cords and stood up. I didn't want to wait in my bedroom while it charged. I felt too exposed. So I planned to bring the brick and my phone into the bathroom again to wait. I stuffed the electronics in my pockets and started the process again of groping around in the blackness for the bathroom door frame when my hands brushed up against something unfamiliar. Did I get lost in my own bedroom? I reached back out with both hands. My left hand felt the right side of the bathroom door frame. I reached my right hand out to the wall to confirm, and I felt it come down on that unfamiliar thing. My fingers tangled in a mess of a fine stringy material. I grabbed it and realized I was grabbing a full head of hair. Someone was standing in front of me. I didn't even think to scream. I bodied my way past the intruder and into the bathroom. I slammed the door shut behind me, locked it, and stood in the blackness. What the fuck? The head I felt was at the height of the light switches, either a small person standing or a big person couching. Either way, it had probably sat there watching me in silence as I was fumbling around in the nightstand. My heart was pounding out of my chest, and I felt like I was going to vomit. I sat in silence, pressed up against the door, listening to the other side. I could hear the neighbors still, but I couldn't hear anything in my bedroom. Then there was a knock at the door. It was a polite knock, as if checking to see if the bathroom was occupied. Then it started to get louder, heavier, more rapid. I thought whoever was on the other side would soon just punch straight through the cheap door. Then silence. I hated how long it took iPhones to recharge. I need light now. I remembered I kept a candle and matches on top of my toilet, so I felt my way over to the other side of the bathroom and found them. I brought them back over to where I could sit, keeping my back pressed against the door. I sat for a while listening and thinking. I kept thinking about the pirates, and I didn't want to lose the progress my eyes had made adjusting to the blackness. Then I heard, from the other side of the bathroom, water dripping. Drip, drip, drip. How had that just started dripping? It sounded like it was coming from my bathtub. I was completely overcome with dread. Was something in here with me? How long had they been in here with me? Were they here when I was brushing my teeth? I felt like I was going to be sick. I had to use the candle. I lit the match and caught the wick of the candle. Drip, drip, drip. A dim yellow flame cast light in a few feet in all directions. But my bathroom was long. I still couldn't make out the far end near the toilet and bathtub. I slid the candle along the floor to the middle of the bathroom. In the dim golden light, I could see two dirty feet sticking out from behind the shower curtain. I raised my eyes up and saw a face, also poking out from behind the shower curtain. It was dark, and I couldn't make out many features except the dark eyes reflecting the light of the candle and its huge smile. I don't think it was human. I was flooded with a primal fear. Me and the thing stared at each other. I felt like a chipmunk staring down a lion, each daring one another to make the first move. I slowly stood up, never taking my eye off of the disgusting face that watched me from my shower. I heard a voice from the other side of the door whisper, "Whatcha gonna do?" Drip, drip, drip. I noticed for the first time it wasn't the bathtub dripping, but saliva from the mouth of this horrid creature in front of me. "Whatcha gonna do?" the voice behind the door asked a little louder. I saw a hand appear from behind the shower curtain, its fingers each 5 inches long, seemingly sharp at the ends and black with decay. It started to slowly pull back the shower curtain. "Watcha ganado, watcha ganado, watcha ganado." The voice outside the door was screaming now. The monster behind my shower curtain slowly moved one long, decaying leg towards me. I felt a vibration in my pocket letting me know my phone was charged. Without breaking eye contact with this monster, I reached in my pocket, turned the flashlight on, and pointed it at the thing. It opened its mouth wide, revealing rows of sharpened teeth, and screamed. With what sounded like dozens of men's, women's, and children's voices. I broke for it. I ran out of the bathroom, my phone's light illuminating the room enough to see that there wasn't just the person whose hair I had touched, but several people, and they were all smiling. I ran out of the bedroom, feeling hands reaching out to me from the darkness and pulling at my shirt. I reached the door and flung myself out into the hallway and ran down the stairs and into the parking lot. I'm sitting in my car now. About 10 minutes ago I saw my bedroom light turn on. Our Bauer was back. I think I'm still going to wait until morning before I go back in there. Story 2. My roommate is into some weird fairy shit, and these aren't cute little human dragonflies with flower petals for clothes and sweet smiles. I don't know about you guys, but when I think of fairies, I'm picturing something like Tinkerbell. Yeah, I know she's technically a pixie, sue me. That is not the shit my roommate is fucking with. I noticed she was weird when I moved in. She was advertising for a roommate on Craigslist, and she said she'd need someone who was open-minded, who was all right with strange people coming and going at all hours, who wouldn't ask questions about things that did involve them, and who would be okay with sharing a bathroom. Yeah, okay, not ideal, but I didn't need ideal. I needed livable. And honestly, I didn't really give a shit what she did in her spare time. Hell, she could have been cooking meth in her room. As long as she didn't get me involved in her drug deals, I wouldn't have given a shit. Turns out she wasn't dealing drugs, unless she was sharing marijuana with her deadbeat friends or something. Instead, she was into the occult, supernatural stuff, conspiracy theories. She believes in anything and everything. She's convinced she's seen Bigfoot. She was abducted by aliens when she was 10 years old. She doesn't get vaccines because the government is using them to control people's minds. That kind of stuff. Is it terrible for me to say that I kind of like her? I mean, let's make no mistake here. She's fucked in the head, but she's actually a really good roommate. pays her bills on time, cleans up after herself, asks me before having her weird gatherings and rituals and shit. Whenever she buys groceries, she grabs my favorite candy bar for me, and at least she's interesting. I'd rather sit and talk to her for an hour than listen to Nancy from work describe her latest MLM adventures. And before you argue with me, Stella, that's the name my roommate chose for herself, I guess. Doesn't vote. So it's not like her weird-ass opinions and beliefs hurt anyone else. She told me once she thinks that if you enter a voting booth, the government will put you to sleep, embed your skin with a mind-reading chip, and release you back into society, and you won't have any memory of what happened, and that it happened to her mom, and that's why her mom believes in evolution, right? Anyway, so life with Stella wasn't terrible. We got along okay, for the most part, and we managed to live together for 6 months before her weirdness started getting a little too close for comfort. What do I mean by that? Well, one morning I woke up to mold growing in a ring in our living room. Seriously, it was a huge-ass ring. Our living room is actually pretty sizable, especially since Stella doesn't believe in furniture, so it's practically empty except for her weird candles everywhere. It never bothered me, since I don't use the common spaces much anyway, but mold growing in my apartment was definitely not okay. Stella, what the hell is this? I asked. Stella was sitting at the edge of it, a mountain of books next to her. I saw a few titles straight away. Myths of the Five Folk, Fairies and Other Creatures, The Magical Arts. In her hands was a book on botany, which was extremely peculiar in the moment, but not so much in hindsight. It's a fairy ring, at least it will be, she said, a small frown on her petite lips as she pored over her book. I beat back the urge to scream. I don't know what a fairy ring is, but I'm pretty sure it doesn't belong in our fucking living room. If you don't get it out of here, so help me God. Stella sighed and put her book down. I thought you'd say that, she said, reaching into the black messenger backpack at her side and pulling out a slightly crumpled envelope. She always had that bag on her, and I often saw her pull out any number of weird things from it. So you can understand that I was a little hesitant to take the envelope from her, but I did, and I opened it, and immediately my frayed nerves were soothed. $500 in cash will do that to a person. For the inconvenience, she said, going back to her book without a second glance at me. And if we get in trouble with the landlord, he'll pay for any damages. I knew our landlord wouldn't bother coming around and checking. He didn't give a shit what anyone did in those apartments anyway, so I was more than happy to let it slide. As long as that shit didn't start growing in my room. I did wonder where she got all that money, though. Stella was never short on cash, even though she didn't have a job, at least not that I could tell. Oh well, never look a gift horse in the mouth. I shrugged my shoulders and let it go. That night before I went to bed, I Googled fairy rings. I only read for about 5 minutes before I got bored and gave up on it. Do you know how much has been written about these things? Too fucking much. Anyway, I figured out the very important things. First, many cultures believe that fairy rings are caused by fairies or pixies dancing in a circle. Second, mortals absolutely should not fuck with them. Now, I wasn't worried. Not only did I not believe in fairies, but I was also pretty sure you couldn't just grow your own fairy ring. I figured that Stella would lose interest in it after a few weeks, like she always did with her random obsessions, and then she'd get rid of it and life would continue as normal. Before that had a chance to happen, however, the fairy ring grew. After a few days it had sprouted mushrooms. I shit you not. Literal mushrooms were growing in my living room. Stella seemed overjoyed with this arrangement. I was pretty grossed out because our room was starting to smell damp and musty and just gross. I really wanted to yank up that carpet and scrub all that nasty crap away. But I focused on the $500 I was getting for being cooperative and tried to will away my annoyance. Stella's excitement grew over the next few days until it spilled over into the few conversations we had. "It's almost ready. They'll be here soon. I can feel it," she said one night when we were having a beer. She was sitting in the middle of the circle while I stayed far outside it. Not out of superstition, but because I wasn't going near that nasty thing. "Are you sure that's how it works?" I asked. My skepticism must have been obvious, because her response was just on this side of indignant. "I've done my research, Janice. It's like that movie. What was it? If you build it, they will come just like that. I've made the ring. They won't be able to resist dancing on it. That's just how it works." I wasn't convinced. But oh hell, why not? It's not real anyway. So who cares how she thinks it works? "So what happens afterwards?" She looked confused. "After what? After the fairies show up," I said. "What happens? Do you talk to them, trap them, ask them to grant you a wish? What?" She stared at me in utter bewilderment for a second, and then burst out laughing. "God, Janice, you're so funny sometimes," she said. I chose not to press the point. Instead, I finished my beer and went to bed. Things played out about how I expected over the next week or so. Stella was obsessed with her fairy ring. I cycled between ignoring it and indulging her. Eventually, her interest started to wane, and she began to turn her attention to other things. I noticed a few books on the Jersey Devil appearing around the apartment, so I figured that's what would plague my life next. I felt like I was living in some sort of sitcom. And then, 3 weeks ago, something different happened. I woke up around 4 in the morning, my sleep disturbed by a strange blue glow coming from under my door. I stumbled out of bed, rubbing the sleep from my eyes as I went in search of the light source. As soon as I entered the living room, I was almost blinded by the blue light assaulting my eyes. I swore to myself as I shielded my face, trying to let my eyes adjust. Eventually they did, and I was able to take in the terrible sight that awaited me. Stella, naked, dancing on the fairy ring, her body twisted and jerked, almost like she was being pulled along. She stumbled, but didn't fall, going round and round so quickly it made me dizzy. I started to walk towards her, confused and somewhat unsettled. Was she on acid or something? I almost just went back to my room and pretended I hadn't seen anything. But then the blood caught my attention. It oozed from small cuts all over her body. A ring of blood was crusted around her wrists. Slashes across her abdomen resulted in red rivulets tracing paths down her legs. Finally, I saw her face. Her eyes were fixed on me, and a shudder worked its way down my spine. Her face was twisted in agony, her mouth a grimace, her eyes red with tears. Snot was running out of her nose. She was heaving for breath, and I was sure, so sure I saw her scream. Except there was no sound. Nothing at all. I couldn't hear the sound of cars passing by on the road outside, the sound of her feet on the carpet, the sound of her breathing. It was like I was trapped in a vacuum. But then again, I didn't really need to hear what she was screaming. I could read it on her lips like the words had been printed there. Help me, help me, help me, help me. My body responded to her silent plea, and I lunged at her, hand outstretched, intent on wrenching her from the circle. But just then she disappeared, vanished in front of my eyes as though she had never been there. I tripped and fell to my knees, just outside the ring of glowing blue mushrooms that dotted the floor. Slowly, before my eyes, the glow faded to nothing until I was alone in the dark. Just me, the silence, and the knowledge that Stella was not coming back. I called the police, of course. That's what you do, right? I've never been in a situation quite like that before. I knew I couldn't tell them what I saw, so I just told them that when I woke up, she was gone, and that was rare for her, that I was worried something had happened. They declared her missing. I steered clear of the living room. I wanted to get out of there as fast as humanly possible, so I booked a hotel room until I managed to find another place. I didn't give a shit about breaking the lease or forfeiting the security deposit on the apartment. I just wanted out. I got a place pretty quickly, a real dump of a studio apartment, but it's affordable, and build up my courage to go back to our apartment, to pack up my few things and go. When I opened the door, God, no matter how long I live, I'll never forget this. When I opened the door, she was there, lying there in the middle of the fairy ring. The cuts had deepened into permanent grooves in her body. She was thinner than before, as though someone had sucked the flesh out of her, tightened her skin until it was tough and leathery. In fact, she almost looked like she'd been mummified. Her eyes were gone, her teeth were gone, her mouth was still gaping open, still screaming for someone to help her. And as I stared at the body, I swear to God I heard a faint giggle coming from somewhere in the apartment. I think I'm done with roommates for a while. Story 3. One of my roommates isn't my roommate. It is a soft, wet sound in your fingers. It would feel like damp velvet, red, drenched in something cold, maybe water, maybe something thicker. I found that note beneath my bed. It was shoved beneath one of the feet of the bed frame. I only found it because I decided to rearrange my room. The note was written on notebook paper with a pen. I didn't know what to make of it. I had 2 roommates. I thought maybe it was one of them playing a joke. I walked into Harold's room. Harold was my best friend since college. We were constantly playing pranks on each other. "Hey man, did you write this?" He looked up from his computer. I showed him the note, and he dropped it in revulsion. No, this is some shit. He paused for a second, looking a bit guilty. "But I did find something like that yesterday in my bag." He showed me an almost identical note, written on the same paper. It read, "It smells like fresh earth or dying worms." The stifled sound of filling the host's fingers, putting yourself in the legs, stretching out in the shoulders, ripping the skin that doesn't fit. We locked eyes, sharing something like fear. "Let's check with Dan," he suggested. We walked together to Dan's room. Dan worked with Harold at the realty office. He was on his bed, reading a book. We showed him the 2 notes. His face was hard. "I thought you guys were fucking with me. I found one too." His read. "It tastes like wood shavings slowly grating the back of your throat. For human eyes it would look like a new language. Some unpronounceable alien thing that demands to be seen at the edge of a blade." that just left Nate. We found Nate on Craigslist when we needed a roommate, and he fit in well. We walked to his room. He was scribbling in his journal. Nate, I said in almost a whisper, did you leave us these creepy notes? He scowled at us. I thought it was you guys being assholes. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the last one. It read, blue is the color you see before you die. I don't do what humans do. I don't find it funny when the squirming ends and the suit is ready for wearing. All four of us went into the living room. We put the 4 notes together and they fit into one sheet of paper. Harold spoke first. Maybe it's just a coincidence. How the fuck is that possible? I retorted. It's just paper. It's not going to hurt us. Nate said anxiously. Dan said, yeah, but it's creepy, right? Not normal. We stood there for a few moments. It was getting dark. Something felt strange. Let's just head to bed, I said reluctantly. We can fight about it in the morning. The other guys laughed. Some of the tension melted away. It was nice to just be calm again. We all started to walk to our rooms when something dawned on us. There were only 3 bedrooms, but there were 4 of us. I shook my head, confused. Wait, how many of us live here? 3, the others said in unison. 3. I stared at the others. A horrible look fell over my face. That's when the realization came over all of us. There should only be 3 people living here, but there were 4. Why the hell are there 4 of us? Dan screeched. I don't know, I said shakily, but no one moves until we figure this out. Fuck this. Harold went to leave, but I grabbed the paperweight off the desk beside me. Look, man, I don't want to hurt you, but no one leaves. The look he gave me was full of betrayal. He sunk down into the east corner of the living room. Nate followed suit and sat in the west corner. I backed up into the north corner and then chose the south. We all just stared at each other. The completed note sat on the desk still, fluttering in the breeze from the open window. After some silence, Nate perked up. So one of us isn't who he says he is? Yeah, but I swear I know all of you. Harold responded. Dan said, I definitely know all of you. I have memories with all of you. We've been living together almost a year now. I chuckled. Maybe we're just going crazy. Let's call Lee. She'll know, Harold urged. Lee was Harold's girlfriend. Nate shakes his head. We can't trust her. She might just say whatever you want her to. I've known Harold since we were kids, I whispered, as real. How can you possibly know that? Nate stands. I'm going to get a sandwich. I don't think so. Dan stands as well, balling his fists. No one leaves this room until we figure this out. So we're just going to starve. Not if we get to the bottom of this. Guys, sit down. I rub my thumb over the paperweight. We need to know who everyone is. Then we can figure out who is lying. Why do you know so much about this? Dan demanded. I let out a long breath. I've read about this kind of thing. It happened to some sorority girls in Ohio. They said there were too many girls for the number of beds. They didn't figure out who it was, and almost all of them died. Die? Harold's voice shook. Yeah, die. I looked up, finding all 3 men staring at me. Nate wiped his forehead. Same thing happened in Portland, I think. An entire office building was killed because there were too many workers for the cubicles. The few survivors said the extra workers were not human. They called them fuck I don't remember. Dan laughed. So you're saying one of us isn't human? That's ridiculous. That's exactly what it would say. Nate yelled at him. It's late, I said calmly. We aren't thinking right. Let's figure this out in the morning. I don't want to sleep, Harold said. Nate responded, well, sleep in shifts. 3 awake, 1 asleep. That way, if one of us attacks, we can stop him. Dan sniffed. We have to sleep out here, yes. Nate replied, you go first. Dan huffed and was obviously frustrated. He grabbed a pillow off the couch and curled into a ball. The rest of us sat in silence. And that's what happened. Last night I wrote down everything that has happened so far. I want you to know that we're still here, still watching each other. If anyone has any information on whatever killed those people or what the note means, please answer me. We are completely stuck. I don't trust anyone except Harold. If you don't hear from me by tomorrow, we are at 112 Ocean Avenue. Send help. This notebook was found at the scene of the crime. It is believed to have been written by the survivor. My phone is dead. I managed to write out what happened and put it on Reddit, but I couldn't tell how many people reply. Maybe one of them has the answer. But since all I have is this notebook, you'll still try to keep track of what is going on. Right now things are calm. We're all hungry, though. We have no idea what we're doing. It was a knee-jerk reaction to pick corners and stay here. Dan is livid. He wants to leave. He keeps suggesting we just go our separate ways and pretend we never heard about these non-human entities. To be honest, I kind of hear his point. Do I really believe in monsters? Nate is pretty quiet. He seems sad and maybe a bit numb. Harold is talkative, like always, has trying to solve the situation. It is very calming to hear him talk. We've been best friends for years now. I trust him implicitly. I'm going to try and sleep now. We figured out a way to get food from the kitchen. Nate and Harold went in together, while Dan and I guarded the living room. They brought out all the non-perishable food from the pantry and dumped it on the floor. Unfortunately, we are a bunch of guys in our late 20s, so most of what we have is snack foods. Dan laid out a plan to ration the food. He has always been good with numbers, and it seemed fair. I have to be honest, after 2 days of no food, the bag of chips I devoured tasted better than anything I'd ever had. Even the warm Mountain Dew was delicious. We still are no closer to figuring out who the imposter is. As time goes by, I am starting to wonder if there even is an imposter. I know these for guys. I have memories with them. The thought of one of them buying it human is. Dan is dead. He'll write more soon. Finally, I have some time to write this out. The others are suspicious of me writing because of the notes we all found. I told them I'm keeping a record of what happens, but Harold is especially concerned. I don't think he trusts me anymore. Like I said, Dan is dead. It was an accident. He got mad and tried to leave. Harold and I went to block him. Nate pushed him backwards, and he hit his head against the desk. The crack was horrible. His head hung like an overripe fruit before his body fell to the ground. He must have died instantly. The moments after were painful. We sat in distressed silence. I was too surprised to feel panic. The other two retreated back to their corners. I couldn't stop standing. Harold wanted to call someone. Nate argued that we would be arrested. Harold said maybe we should be. Their argument petered out as we all stared at Dan's lifeless body. I had never seen a dead body before. He looked normal. There was no blood or anything. He just looked like he had collapsed, and that given some time he might stand up again. That was 3 days ago. He doesn't look normal anymore, and he smells awful. I am so thirsty, Mom. I love you. Am so sorry. I don't know how we got here. Please forgive me. If you are reading this, I have a feeling I'm dead. And please don't let me rot in this living room like Dan. Please save me. Nate killed himself while I was sleeping. I woke up to Harold screaming. Nate had slashed his wrist with a pair of scissors. Harold started to cry. He explained that he had dozed off, and Nate must have done it while he was asleep. Nate was lying peacefully on his back, his eyes closed and his mouth in a smile. I could almost feel what he was feeling. He had escaped. I held back tears. Harold sobbed and begged me to forgive him. I told him that Nate would have done it whether we were awake or not. We couldn't have saved him. I didn't really believe that. I stood warily. Our food was about to run out. Our small trips for water were not hydrating enough, but it was done. I told Harold it was over. Obviously, I knew Harold was real, so we could finally leave this place and find help. But Harold said no. He said it wasn't time yet. I didn't understand, but my mind was too tired to fight. I sat back in my corner. Maybe tomorrow. I want to go home. Something is wrong with Harold. I stabbed him 20 times, and he won't die. The skin of his back has split. The bones are breaking. He is bleeding blue. It sounds like wet bare feet. I think Harold is a cocoon. As emerging, he looks hungry. Mom, please, I'm sorry. It is a soft, wet sound. In your fingers it would feel like damp velvet, red, drenched in something cold, maybe water, maybe something thicker. It smells like fresh earth or dying worms, the stifled sound of filling the host's fingers, putting yourself in the legs, stretching out in the shoulders, ripping the skin that doesn't fit. It tastes like wood shavings slowly grating the back of your throat. For human eyes it would look like a new language, some unpronounceable alien thing that demands to be seen at the edge of a blade. Blue is the color you see before you die. I don't do what humans do. I don't find it funny when the squirming ends and the suit is ready for wearing. Michael Thomas was found at his address after his mother called the police. He was unharmed, although the same cannot be said for his two roommates. He was brought to a mental health facility where he will serve a mandatory 30 days. The police have decided that the deaths were accidental in the case of Daniel and self-inflicted in the case of Nathan. No charges will be filed against Michael. Despite his apparent good health. Michael was acting strangely. He wouldn't stop talking about the ill fit of his skin. Hopefully the psych ward will do him some good. Story 4. My neighbor tells me that she's concerned about my roommate. I don't have a roommate. Anyway, I live in an old apartment complex that's very close to the university I attend. My apartment is old and very outdated, but the rent is cheap. I only work part-time while I attend university and was excited to find somewhere affordable. I didn't really care what it looked like. Moving into this apartment meant I could still live comfortably. I live on my own, no roommates, and at first I was comfortable in my apartment and never had any strange experiences for the first year. The only thing that I can remember strange was finding random hairs that weren't mine. The first few times it happened, I didn't even think anything of it, but it got more frequent. I went to sit on my recliner and saw a long blonde hair weaved into the fabric. Then I was in the shower, and the same long blonde strand was on the shower curtain. It was strange because I have no blonde friends. Erin has ginger hair and Jenny has jet black hair. My own hair is shoulder length and chocolate brown. For a whole year I would randomly find these blonde hairs, but always just thought they probably came from my clothes after being out. It wasn't creepy enough to worry about. Then after a whole year, I was laying on my couch watching Netflix. Out of nowhere I hear a girl say my name. I froze. I couldn't move. I was terrified. I didn't know the voice and didn't want to find out who said it. Suddenly all the blonde hairs I had found were on my mind. After 2 minutes just sitting there, I searched my apartment. My door was locked, all windows closed, and no one was there. This is when I told Aaron and Jenny. I told them about the constant findings of blonde hairs and then the voice say my name. It still wasn't serious at this point. They thought it would be cool if I had a sleepover, and we tried talking to my spirit. Aaron was really into the paranormal. Me and Jenny went along with it. It seemed cool at the time. I don't think I fully believed what was happening. Anyway, we were all in my apartment, and Aaron says he should talk to the spirit and used her phone to record. We caught nothing on camera, but Aaron still swears she heard a girl's voice say home. Me and Jenny didn't hear anything, though. After quite a fun night pretending to be ghost hunters, we all went to sleep in my room. Me and Jenny in the bed and Aaron on the floor on a blow-up mattress. It was 2 a.m. and Jenny starts screaming, so loud and terrifying. She was still asleep, and me and Aaron desperately tried to wake her, but she wouldn't wake. I ran in, grabbed a glass of water, and threw it on her face, and she woke up. She was so upset and scared, saying that in her dream she was in my apartment alone. When all the lights went out and she could feel someone with her, she said she realized it was a dream but couldn't wake up, hence the screaming. She wanted to leave, and we were all so shook up that we all left and went to Janice, who still lives with her parents. Jenny didn't want to talk about the dream again and told me that she's never had an experience like that before and doesn't want to go back into my apartment again. She was and still is traumatized by her experience. Fast forward 2 months since the Jenny incident. I was at uni and got a notification that my parcel I had been waiting for was successfully delivered. I was confused because it was an expensive item, GoPro, and needed to be signed for. I left uni and rushed to my apartment because they had obviously left it on my doorstep, and I didn't want it to get stolen. When I got there, it wasn't outside. It was inside on my kitchen bench. I know that the landlord has keys and must been there, so I got a bit annoyed because usually he tells me if he's coming over and why. I called him. He denied being there and told me he would have let me know if he was coming over, and he always has. This was true, but I just ignored that part of my mind which was screaming something wasn't right and just told myself that he doesn't want to admit he was there. And fast forward another 2 months and I finally get a neighbor. The apartment next door to me, which was also the only other apartment on my floor, has been in repair for ages and has just been rented out to the nicest old lady. Her son helps her move in. Tess is his 40s and a nice guy. Asks me to look out for his mom because he worries about her being alone. I reassure him that it's a good area and I've never had a problem living on my own in the complex. Faye is a lovely old lady and often brings me leftovers. I help her with putting her rubbish out and getting her bits and bobs from the shops when I go. We easily become friends and life goes on. Now, here is where the most fucked up thing happens, and I will recall the whole conversation for you word for word. I can't stop thinking about it since it happened a week ago. I just arrived home from uni. Am about to go into my apartment when I hear Faye calling me from her apartment door. Hi, honey. Do you have a moment? I just wanted to talk to you quickly. Yeah, sure. Everything okay? Now I'm walking towards her, and she's motioning for me to come into her apartment. We sit down at her table, and she says something that sends chills all over my body. Something I will never in my life forget. I don't know how to bring this up, and I've thought about it for a while, and I need to talk to you about it. Am concerned about the girl you live with. Now, I understand she must have some sort of problem, and I feel for her. I really do. And I want to help any way I can. But the crying all day starting to affect my life. I've tried to go over there and comfort her, but she just tells me she's fine and doesn't come to the door. In my head, all the strange things that have happened start flashing through my mind, and I could hear my heartbeat in my ears. Even so, I reply, Faye, the crying must be coming from another apartment. I live alone. Faye looked like she was in shock at my reply, but quickly recovered and said, if you're worried about me complaining, that's not the case. I was outside your apartment door just today. She spoke to me through the door, telling me she was fine. I've seen her too. So there's no use denying it. And not angry. I just want to help sort it out. Now I was freaking out. I didn't even know what to say, but kept assuring her I lived alone. I took her into my apartment, and she seemed apprehensive. I showed her the one bedroom that was mine and that no one else was there. She then insisted that I got back to her apartment for a coffee. I was glad she did. She made me a coffee and told me of all the times she had heard the crying and how she stood outside my door and offered help. She said the girl would always reply with the same monotone, "I'm fine," and then the crying would stop. Now I was really freaking out, and Faye could tell. Something she said stuck out at me, and I got the courage to ask her, even though I really didn't want to know. You said you saw her. What did she look like? I heard your door open, and though it was you coming home, as I opened my door I saw her going down the stairs. All I really saw was her blonde hair. My veins were ice. I couldn't believe what was happening. I told Faye everything about the hair, the sleepover, the delivery. She looked how I felt. She told me that I was welcome to stay in her apartment. I did. We also decided to contact the landlord, thinking maybe someone still had the key and had been living in my apartment. He seemed very offish. He is usually quite a funny guy, always making jokes, but he just assured me no one else had a key and then basically hung up. I'm now back in my apartment. The only people who know my story are Faye, Jenny, Aaron, and two boys from uni, James and Hudson. What do I do now? I know this all seems so far-fetched, and I've thought about having a priest come around like in the movies, but I'm so embarrassed to contact one. What do I do? Okay, so I thought I'd update everyone on my situation. Firstly, I contacted my landlord. His name is Angelo. I think he's of Italian descent as he has a slight accent. I'd describe Angelo as larger than life, but he seemed so off when I spoke to him last. After ignoring a few of my calls, he finally called me back yesterday afternoon. He admitted that it's possible the previous tenant could still have the keys. I started to get upset and quite angry, but he stops me and says, "Listen, it's not my fault. She stopped paying rent, and she wasn't answering any of my calls. A whole month went by, so I came over and let myself in. All her stuff was still here. Everything, it was like she had just left. All the food in the fridge had gone off, and there was a horrible smell, but it still seemed lived in. I waited another month of calling her and coming over during the day and in the evening, but nothing changed in the apartment. I realized she wasn't coming back. Her handbag was gone, so I thought she just ran out of money and ran off. I did report her missing to the police, but they wanted photographs and loads of information, and I had nothing but her name, which they told me must have been a fake. They basically said she's obviously done a runner, and they would investigate it, but nothing ever came of it. So I got the cleaners in and put the apartment up for rent. I instantly went cold. One thing that he said kept playing over and over in my mind. I rented the apartment partly furnished and realized it wasn't Angelo's stuff. It was hers. Angelo confirmed this, and I instantly felt sick. I got her name, of course, first and last. Even though the police said it was a fake, I decided to do my own research. She said her name was Lucy. I looked her up on every social media account and just searched her last name to see if I could find parents or a sibling. It's an uncommon surname, and after messaging a few possible leads, I came up empty. Angelo sent me her phone number and said that she had no emergency contacts, which I find strange. Angelo rents his apartments out privately and asked me for a lot more information than he had from Lucy. He obviously learned his lesson. So anyway, last night James came over and we went over the apartment thoroughly. There is nowhere that a person can hide, nowhere. Then the strangest thing of all happened, and I'm still trying to understand what happened as I sit and write it. I'm in my bed, almost asleep, and am laying on my side facing the bathroom door, which is half open. The light's on in the bathroom as I don't like being in complete darkness. The door moves just slightly, which immediately grabs my attention. Now I'm wide-eyed staring at the door and looking at the thin line of light by the hinges. I can see something is blocking out a section of light. Like a person, my heart was beating so fast, but I knew if this was her in my apartment, then I need to confront her. I jumped up so fast and was in the bathroom looking behind the door in a second. Nothing, there was no one there. My bathroom is tiny, but I looked around anyway. I just can't believe there was no one there. I could definitely see someone. When I sat back on my bed, none of the light was blocked out anymore. To save my sanity, I've convinced myself that because I was almost asleep, maybe I dozed off for a second and it was just a dream. I don't know. I just don't know what to think anymore. I've spoken to Angelo again today and told him that I want the locks changed, and it's his responsibility, which he agreed and said he would call around for quotes and get back to me. I'm obsessed with my roommates' cooking. I found them on Craigslist, which was my first big mistake. 3 fun college friends looking for a roommate to vibe with. Admittedly, I thought I had met my soulmates. How do I describe the feeling of meeting someone I feel like I've known my whole life? The second I stepped inside what would become my prison, I could smell it. Food. Home-cooked meals have always been my kryptonite, so stepping directly into the aroma of spaghetti sauce, my mouth was already watering. God, it smelled so fucking good, teasing the back of my nose and throat. It's almost like the house itself knew I was hungry. The owner was a tiny blonde with enough enthusiasm to cast my gaze away from rat droppings on the floor, and there were a lot. It was the first thing I noticed, not the homely glow spilling from the doorway or the abstract paintings on the wall. There was too much poop to not notice squishy brown balls directly under her feet. That wasn't in the listing description. Still, though, the owner's smile was enough to drag my focus away from their lack of hygiene. I didn't know what to say, so I blurted, "That smells good." The blonde grinned, leaning against the door. "Oh, you'll get used to that." When I couldn't think of a response, she bounded forward. "Hi, you're here for the room." She stuck out her hand for me to shake, and immediately I noticed her fingernails. If I wasn't such a germ freak, I wouldn't have noticed her nails were filthy, a slight reddish tint coloring the stubs. That was a red flag, until I noticed the plastic apron hanging loose over scuffed denim overalls. Ah, that made sense. Her name was Lizbeth, and she looked exactly like a Lizbeth, and tidy blonde hair hanging in loose pigtails. Nodding, I followed her into the hallway. Kier Lizbeth was bursting with unhinged golden retriever energy. I already loved her. She was exactly how she came across via text, sending me emoji hearts and kisses, and replying with, "I'm so excited to finally meet you." I appreciated her remembering to call me Kier, and not Kiara. "We've been expecting you all afternoon." Traffic, I lie. Stepping out of my shoes, my anxiety had gotten the better of me. I had been sitting in a local coffee shop for 2 hours, trying to psych myself up. I don't know why I was scared. I took a moment to drink in the hallway. It was cute. There were piles of shoes stacked up against the wall. I noticed a pair of snow boots, which was strange, because I couldn't remember the last time our town had snow. I didn't realize I was frowning at the boots until Lizbeth gently grabbed my shoulders and steered me down the main hallway. "Welcome to our little family," she said. "It's not great, and we're thinking about moving. But for now, it's home. What do you think?" Ismold appreciating the Tirifentum. The house was old, that these guys had our EMODLLED to fit in the 21st century. Eternity tentafis talenti. How was upset leisure fenfing. Everything gebuttrist is dear. Big sister energy. Her strippy socks wearber. Wemau rated him a feffela lezet and cult classicormum. I didn't truckle hor tarrant. Oh, Yuri an artist. Earmarked with Werflid Wisma to live daisies a daisies a naso anazi. Lizbeth didn't torter, sliding across door fontori. "Nope, I'm actually yariter. Maybe schwazem bar terrets. Ingrid wa fair tess, combined with arm. Homouroma. Garlic, twolgeis where erguing tup screen. Seated narrati. Threr werio refo stall. Inotu sedan extra bows. And it was already diative. Idlidden tree lizo and tire wizarded in a days azays. Anio thegais dralaris shooting migran. His redder was a late. He was cute with whitebro neskered. Kier, right. His smell was friendly. I'm Nate. He gestured to three. Acted with the werfram, thick brown curly shingy, the Gaia Feredmovi, standing gakwaderesti. All three o thimilester, Alma stupalishkund lizen, thesa guys were entingting. That's Fen. Our resident cook. His lips curled into a smile. Hesale so painful a bar bada tartat. Thebranet Fen. Shoved him, he sleeing hound the lastergems. Yeah, because he did a 4E, bows, Lisbeth Cutin, I told you notamer bears, rolling highsies Islicks, nata ternetum, slumping in front of fins, wack new wary combing, heno de death extrable, digin, I few preferavis, fin cando mean met free la sogna. They're so minchentori, heshet migrin, your air like your ba falisiene, hippoliti liticasit. I can eat meat, I said, trying tognerenance obnoxious law. Usonia faustuspies, I thought class lefort terrorist, apretly not. Take jokes, though, really, hiskas a track a draggery, his lips split into grintenikis. Holy shit, part of wasn't werterist, etast a damazing, the exact amount of fisp, athican sauced in a cashi. Tai gensum a trevi fantififemen, Isis asking force folds, the word stang gledenti, fin was already jupen. Taking me bowl, see, netta had spagetherischal a cash, and Mr. Mackergold, it ad tacha one theology adales, almost painful aguanto. I don't think quantant, busta wash hyperfecutitions, just thicken a gwif teasel, and in haleta tutu. Finn's cooking. Fuck. How do describe it? It's wasecly hard terum, with an added samala tinging, was thressertationus, Finn was sinculinarius, suf course I had a terrorist, iden tremum burfists. Just a titisignifica fish initius in an ancient shin zen zen zine zini ni neek zzz. Mimind caught in a fog, Lisbeth's ham affair tes, and the room was grit, a double bed with heffent wens. Due to cold and stiffened tinging, we played merry a cartent, and a strictly vendrim, when thurgit a flash and tank ding. I cowled not stiffened tinging, sea sauce, the pasta, the perfectrish facientals, and garla synthemate. I went up, miming filled wintuntinty, hecco cad frus fingy, and a lost miss fella verbent. Ta chicken alfredo, the food was restolatune, and a clean moplidra, hungry, no, starving for more. It became an addiction. As topped going to class. No, I forgo to hadless. It cowled and think wa fintini, and when hawaskin tor como lo mo 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 no no mo no 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 mo mo bok mo coke. Day started, do bloonton, Monday became Tuesday, and sudden it was twary, and it was starting to tavis. I caught myself fonting, sitting Chris Laslagream, wet warmth drippingding, the color of me sheards, poor ling darkness or fefsen. I see ought hold of myself. Rule, Finn's cooking wasp mem, alsic nanus rinkingy, it read to leave, it packed up me bags, buchon see wasn'tly. On semi-hand washing door, I cold smell it. Thero matchesing, leaching gone to my brain. It tragedden back, it draped me bags, drew lauriati filigum, kier, Nate was behind him, a balafast ancients, went the Silaster Frismton, in Otis Sediston Jorders, streaks of scarletal, pooling in his balls. Where are you going? Heno did Dothable. His voice was soft, hypnotizing. Dude, your dinner eyes ready. My bag slipped for me's. I called sensi smalisti. Right? I heard myself say a bear. Aphasteric algiglagriac. Dinner. It was soury disturifing me, stuffing meself, until it cold and treth. Spaghetti zocka dripping, staining my clothes. It was sallow verm, painting me fingeric, blood red. Nate held the bowl, waiting until a doula den. I was on my knees, trembling, bragging me tongue gendry. I lost myself faffer terric dilem, consciousness bluntin. It was sitting at the benton, inhaling my dinner. Thany was spent a voti, my head pressed a la galaxtons. I didn't notice eshamation as. 2 days later, I was running the ifiramer, along a ted tooth van stericarbzikiks. A bike me where pfeffer festal, shivering, thinking about melts. When a slip do to Todd, he glimpsed das and graffry, not to mention it hella pfeffled, but freezing to death is stopped feeling geffer, impredator effort tenter, but me bodista pefriv, a beggin having frosting at dinges, because miskinwindle, it's not liquidin to get along with effer, onsidio formation tusen, and me ongoing erafrafisms, wahed movie nights, game nights, and stay it up to Lake Tenty, Lisbeth Wold Philandles, that wofusen grisazen, and natin sistedin charid, almost die-deriving tengen. The others didn't go to class, but they did disappear for several hours every night. I stopped asking questions, and my brain melted into soup. Finn's food took over my life. During movie night, I was thinking about his food. Game night, I was in the kitchen, eating leftovers from the trash. There was something wrong. The words slammed into me every so often. But I had a toxic relationship with my housemates. I couldn't just go. Where else was I going to find Finn's cooking? 9 p.m. I didn't know the day, or how many days it had been since I planned my escape out of the bathroom window, only to be lured back by teasing smiles and mushroom risotto. It was so hard to regain control of my own mind, and by the time I had managed to get a hold of myself, there they were, always 15 steps ahead of me. I pulled out a bloody molar after dinner, dropping it down the toilet. I think I was supposed to care. Before I lost most of my mind, I did find something under my mattress, several VHS tapes, all of them labeled different dates until the handwriting was unintelligible. I was frowning at a pale brunette bride when the real footage jumped into view. I was seeing Lisbeth, Finn, and Nate squashed together on the couch. Nate leaned forward. He looked healthier. His face was fuller, a pinkish blush in his cheeks. He opened his mouth, and I glimpsed a full set of healthy teeth. Present Nate had elongated fang-like incisors. When he was eating, Nate could fillet a chicken bone within a second. His teeth were not normal, neither were mine. I was losing all of mine in favor of sharper points that cut my lip open. The book cleared his throat on the tape, and I leaned closer. Nate's mouth formed a teasing smile. If you're watching this video, it means all three of us are dead. The other to side-eyed him, and he burst out laughing. Lisbeth nudged him just like Nate. She to look normal. Her blonde hair was tied into a strict ponytail. This girl was glowing, while present Lisbeth was more of a shell. The girl turned to the camera. Ignore Nate, he thinks has funny. I am funny, he said. Why are we recording these on my mom's wedding tapes? What's wrong with using TikTok? Because this way is cooler, Lisbeth said. Shush, it's a cool aesthetic. Nate raised a brow. What is aesthetic about ruining my mom's wedding tapes? Anyway, Finn, who was usually shy and withdrawn, was like a hyperactive puppy. It was jarring seeing him smiling. We figured we should give our potential housemate a look into our lives. He shot Nate the side-eye. Well, we were going to, until you dropped the bombshell that you're going skiing with your weird family. Nate scoffed. It's not my fault, I told you. I don't have a choice. He turned to the camera. Do you see what I have to deal with? You're leaving us for 2 weeks, Finn groaned, tipping his head back. No offense, but I hope you get eaten by a bear. I'm taking full offense, Nate shot back. The tape was mainly bickering and laughing, so I took it out and inserted the next tape. It was the three of them again, though I noticed Lisbeth and Finn were keeping their distance from Nate, who was sitting on the other side, his head cocked, half-lidded eyes drinking in the camera. Lisbeth's smile was a little too forced. She kept shooting panic glances at the guy. Hey, so we're sorry for taking a while to record. Nate just came back from holiday. When Lizbeth drifted off, Finn jumped in. He's sick, he said, shuffling further away from the boy. We're pretty sure it's contagious. So whatever our boy has, we really don't want it. Nate didn't move, his lips quirking into a smile. Aren't you going to ask me how my trip was? His voice was different, and it hit me. He was mimicking Lizbeth. Finn and Lizbeth exchanged glances. Tell him to stop. Lizbeth stood up, her hands clenched into fists. Finn, Nate, take it easy, man. Finn was trembling. Why do you keep? He shot a look at the camera. The tape ended in eerie silence, with the two of them watching Nate, whose smile only widened. The third tape made me regret exploring my housemate's past. There was just Nate sitting there, completely naked. His cheeks were gaunt, lips pulled into a feverish grin. Behind him was rapid movement, the sounds of muffled screaming. The tape continued for 5 minutes, and Nate didn't move a muscle. The fourth tape was thankfully back to normal-ish. It started midway through a hissed conversation between them. Finn was sitting cross-legged on the floor, Lizbeth was perched on the chair arm, and Nate was sitting with his knees pulled to his chest. There were giant bald patches on his head. I found myself running my hands through my hair. I don't know, he whispered into his knees. I told you, I don't remember anything. Finn's lips curled with disgust. He was gingerly wobbling his own loose tooth. You don't remember disembowelling my fucking cat and stuffing her head in the refrigerator? He made a point of scooting further away. He dislodged the tooth, his eyes widening. You're sick. He needs a doctor, Lizbeth said softly. Her hair was greasy, her clothes stained. I could tell she had been up all night, dark circles shadowing her eyes. Nate curled into himself. I know I do. Fuck. Finn stood up shakily, raking his fingers down his face. We can fix this. Okay, we're getting you help. He wrapped his arms around himself. It's freezing. I'm turning up the thermostat. Don't. Nate's tone hardened. It's too warm. What are you talking about? I can see my breath. Thella's tape felt wrong in my clammy hands. I inserted it when thudding footsteps came up the steps. Kier, hey, I have this new video game. I gathered up the tapes and made my escape before Nate could find me. I wanted to think about what I had found, a clear sickness affecting my housemates, and now it was running through my blood. It was skinning me alive, stealing away my thoughts, making me hungry, but I couldn't think. Every time I tried, I fantasized about eating instead. I can't remember what day it was when I snapped to fruition. The sound of the front door slamming shut downstairs was too loud, and I jerked awake, drool already dripping down my chin. Too loud, I curled into myself, slamming my hands over my ears. I forgot my name. I forgot the year. I forgot why I was naked and chewing on my blanket. I was so hungry, jumping to my feet. I staggered at how fast I was, my thoughts dizzy. Clothes were too warm, too stuffy. But I couldn't just walk around naked. Looking at myself in the mirror, I was losing my hair. I didn't notice until my half-lidded gaze caught the visible bald patch on my scalp. When I ran my fingers through it, my nails were loose and hanging off. My skin was pale. My eyes were sunken and red-rimmed. I prodded at my cheeks. Somehow I was getting thinner. But I was eating at least 3 bowls of food a night. Wrong. I stepped back, my nerve endings on fire. Get out. Get the fuck out. but again I couldn't think of anything except food. I stood for a long time, poking at my emaciated stomach. I was never this thin, right? Kier, Lizbeth shouted from downstairs. "Where back?" Making me way downstairs. I didn't remember actually walking down them. I was at the top, and then I was at the bottom. My breath labored, my toes prime. My body didn't make sense. It felt like I could twist and contort it. Immediately I could smell our meal, the aroma forcing my legs into a stumbling power walk to the kitchen. This meal smelled fresh. Instead, my housemates were preparing the food. I noticed the plastic first. Under my feet was a sheet of plastic spread out across the floor. I registered the red splatters, but my mind refused to confirm it was in fact exactly what it looked like. I waited for them to reel back in horror at me discovering their hobby, except neither of them were fazed. Lizbeth was playing with the oven dial, wearing a blood-splattered apron. While the boys were knelt on the floor, there was a lump of something, what was left of a human body, that had been skin. Nate's red slicked hands were buried in the abdomen, while Finn had sliced open their skull, scooping out the brain into a plastic container. I could feel my body spasming with fear, a scream clawing its way up my throat. "Hey, Kier!" Lizbeth saluted me with her wooden spoon. She was jumping up and down on her heels, waving the utensil excitedly. My housemate was stirring something lumpy. I took that moment to take a slow step back. If I turned and ran, I could make it out of the front door before they could move. Kier, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear, Lizbeth beamed at me. She was unbothered, unfazed, which meant I was either fucking hallucinating, or my housemates really thought I would be okay with their casual cannibalism. I felt myself freeze, a thick paste creeping its way up my throat. If they had been eating people, then, before the thought could fully register, I was already knelt on the ground, choking up the remnants of my lunch. "Do you mind grabbing me the sriracha sauce from the cupboard?" The word was caught in my throat, yes, but instead of a reply, a shriek was clawing its way into my mouth. "It's on the bottom shelf," Nate said from his place on the floor. He was humming a melody, and I found myself mimicking it. The boy looked up, a faded red blur caught around his iris. His smile was wide. Fleshy white streaks caught between his teeth. "Why was Ismailing?" Nate patted the place next to him. "Yo, I'll show you how to skin a corpse. It's actually really easy. You just use the blade like this," he mimed, dragging the knife. "It's a clean cut across the gut." Finn chuckled, his hands full. "Well, take her hunting first when she's caught her first meal. Then we show her how to correctly get a corpse." No," Lizbeth sang. "That's too much. She's not even eaten raw yet." My mouth was watering, and the gooey streak of scarlet looked so good. I followed their words and took out the sriracha. My legs giving way, I hit the ground, except I barely felt the impact. Run? Why was I shuffling over to a meat cleaver? Run? Why was I joining them? Three of them were in front of me. Suddenly, there was something inhuman about the way their bodies twisted, like their skin was shedding. Finn regarded me with a cocked head, his teeth on display. Nate and Lizbeth were more territorial, backing me into the wall, and I was twisting around and making for the door. Fuck this. I tried to escape for times. Each time I am awake, screaming, and they are dragging me back. I went back to the tapes, sliding in tape number 5. But already I could see their emaciated limbs were jerking. moving slowly, skin rippling. Finn coughed lumps of red into his hands. He sat back, closing his eyes. He opened his mouth, pointing to his upper incisors, lips widening into a genuine smile. "See these?" He prodded to the tooth. "Ha, I have actual fangs. Thanks, Nate, you fucking idiot." Finn went on about vampires for way too long, so I rewound it. "I have days." Finn spoke through his fingers, "maybe a week, if I starve myself." He sighed, turning his focus to the camera. "If you find this tape, there's only one thing I want you to do," he said. "Burn this place down." The guy pried his eyes open, and I could see writhing darkness tangling around his iris. It was spreading, a spider-like web taking over him. "Whoever welcomed you into our house isn't us. I showed you what happened to Nate to scare you away. Man, get the fuck out of this house." Something moved below him, and already he was jerking up, an inhuman snarl ripping from his throat. There was the hint of red swirling around his pupil, elongated teeth retracting back. "Burn this place down." He heaved out a breath with us inside. "I'm at a loss what to do because I have this thing too. I don't even know what it is, but I can't bring it into the outside world. I'm terrified of this thing, but am pretty sure it's contagious. If I had to guess, I think it's spread through our saliva. Like Finn said, burn all of us and kill this thing, but I don't want to fucking die. They'll be back from their hunt soon. I'm supposed to be joining them. Please, if there's anyone who can tell me how to help them, help me. I can't kill them."